Hello, I'm Jan Smith with Citizens for Family Preservation. I'm going to talk today about child protective services and psychological evaluations. As you know, that has become a pretty dominant part of the evaluation process in terms of whether or not a child is going to reside with parents or extended family. First, you need to understand what the DSM IV is. The DSM IV is a manual that was originally devised for insurance companies for billing, for the psychiatrists and psychologists to bill the insurance companies using specific diagnosis. Many of those diagnoses now have such broad definitions that virtually anyone can end up with that diagnosis. For example, bipolar disorder. Bipolar, if you've ever had a mood swing in your life, you can end up with that diagnosis, literally. In order to get the DSM-IV, you can go to any public library and go into the reference section, take your psychological evaluation with you, and begin to look up the diagnoses that they have provided and look up the criteria. The definitions for those criteria are all clearly documented within the DSM-IV, and you can kind of compare what they've said with what the DSM-IV says. Keep in mind that it's all about finances in this particular system, and it's all about being able to bill insurance companies, and for that matter even the state. If they are going to be providing services, they have to be able to justify those services using the DSM-IV and the numbers associated with the DSM-IV. Also know that not all clinicians are equal. So one clinician may say that you're chronically depressed, another one may say that you are bipolar, another one may say you're schizophrenic, and it just keeps going and going. It is not uncommon for someone to be involved in clinical therapy in a host of different providers where each one has their own take on what that is. Why is that? It is because they're not using uniform standards, and everybody has a subjective view that they put into it. So clinical psychology is not an exact science, yet the judicial system has turned this scam into an exact science, incorporating it in local judicial law. It is very critical to find out who in your state is involved in creating these judicial rules and begin to work with them to have a more fair and equitable system. Secondly, you also need to understand two books. One of them is called Beyond the Best Interest of the Child, and the other one is Before the Best Interest of the Child, because they carry doctrines that these so-called experts will bring into a court of law and use against you. Also, I have a link on Washington State Extended Families. I have two websites. One is WashingtonStateExtendedFamilies.com, and the other one is CitizensForFamilyPreservation.com. On the WSEF website, there's a link, and that link will take you to a section where you can take all kinds of practice psych eval tests. Now, there's three parts to a psych evaluation test. The first one is the psych evaluation test, a parenting component, and then a verbal interview. Even if you come out completely normal on the written part of it, they can get you, and I'm saying it that way, they can get you on the verbal interview. And they can use the information that you provide in a host of different ways. For example, if you were 6 years old and your parents were divorced at that time, there are some possible responses to that experience. But what they will do is they will pick one out of a hat and label you without any real basis. And so you need to really begin to look at the psych evaluation that they have provided and what is their basis. Everything that they say they have to be able to back up, and they may not be able to back it up. So there's in these three parts, the verbal interview, you're going to want to be very careful about what you share, and you're going to want to defend your positions. And you're going to want a complete copy of their evaluation what they said, why they said it, and if they're backing up their program or not. For example, I know personally of a psych eval where a clinical psychologist pulled a diagnosis out of a hat, didn't read the fine print, because if he would have read the fine print, he would have realized that he just proclaimed this particular client cured. And instead, he recommended services through his organization where he made money. So these kinds of things are going on all the time. And to begin to understand the psychological process starts with the DSM IV and being able to compare your psych evaluation with another psych evaluation. Also know that the chances are extremely high that the court is going to order you to take a psych eval. So in the beginning stages, try to get insurance that will pay for a psychological evaluation so that you can include your own. Then it's going to become very clear in a court of law that the clinician that they require you to attend and the clinician that you are currently paying for, they're going to say two different things. Now, this is where the judicial rules get complicated, because the judicial rules will give preference to the clinician that CPS hires within their rules, and you need to object to that right there in the court of law, because how can their CPS clinician be of more value than your clinician? And so it's going to get down to that kind of warfare, and it really is warfare. So to discredit their CPS clinician, you need to get your own evaluation. So what does that cost? Well, I'll tell you, it costs about $5,000. So it is critical in the beginning stages, the early stages, if you think they're going to require a psychological evaluation, to make sure that you're set up to get your own. Thank you.